Hello, my name is Poppy, and today I'm going to be talking about some books and women and books. And you know, it was International Women's Day this week, and I like to pay respect to that. It's nice, we gotta love women. I certainly do. Today I'm going to be talking through some books that I love. They're going to be written by women and also have strong female characters. And not strong female characters in the sense that they're like hit and violence people, in the sense that they genuinely have like depth and are complex and are not just like fighty women, you know? Or like romantic lead. No, written by women, have good women in. That is the criteria for today's book recommendations. My necklace is jingling too much. Anyway, first up is this book, The Memory Book by Lara Avery. This book follows a young woman by the name of Samantha as she has to deal with this disease that she gets called Niemann-Pickett type C. She is a very ambitious young woman. She is really driven and determined to get what she wants to get. And then this condition hits her and all of a sudden she has to deal with so much stuff that she just didn't have to deal with before. I suggest this book because of this character Samantha. You really get a sense of what she's going through as you read the book. You see her as she starts off as still extremely driven, extremely ambitious, and as her priorities change throughout the book, you get to watch that as she kind of like opens up. I really appreciate this book. It's so beautifully written. It's written from like kind of like diary entries of Samantha, so you really get into her head as she goes through all this stuff. It's heartbreaking. This book, just warning you, is genuinely heartbreaking. I cry every single time I read this book. It's so beautiful, it's so stunning. Seriously, I cannot recommend this book enough. Next on the list of cool female authors, cool female characters books thing. Next we have The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. This was one of my favourite books for a while. I absolutely love the way it's written. I think it's so atmospheric. This book is about vampires, and there are these things called cold towns that were set up when vampirism started becoming like spread across the world. And in these cold towns is where vampires and people who might turn into vampires are sent to live. Humans, like normal humans, can go choose to live there. There are a lot of humans who like idolise vampires, who want to become a vampire, who just think vampires are really cool, and they go over there. Tana in this then goes over to one of the cold towns for reasons I won't reveal, because you know, you might want to read the book. So she has to go into one of these cold towns, and then it follows Tana as she goes through all these trials in this town that she's been thrown into as she tries to protect people she loves. I chose this book for my list because of the character of Tana, who I think is so driven, so amazing. She's fearless, she's very brave. I really appreciate that. I think she's really cool. I think this book is really cool. For the next two books, I have talked about these in the video before, but I'm going to talk about them again because I love them. Next book is A Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. Quick summary of what this is about. Group of people get picked to go into this big castle thing called the Ice Court, steal someone from the Ice Court, get out safely, take them back. You know, there's lots of magic that is very political, very good is all I can say. It's so good. But the female characters in this, the two that I'm talking about specifically, are called Inej and Nina, and they are so cool and both like completely different, which I think is amazing. Because you know, when you get like cool female characters, especially in a fantasy novel, they tend to just be like, let's beat people up, yay, and that is all we get of them. That is not true in this book. They're both such complex characters in completely different ways. They both have really good backstories that are again completely different, and I really appreciate that. I think this book is so good. They both have such admirable qualities that are again completely different. I wouldn't say Nina is a typical fantasy heroine, and the fact that she is open and she's so ready to accept people, but she's also very selfless, which you see towards the end of this novel especially. So yeah, I would recommend this book very much. I love these books. Next is also a book that I've talked about before, but it's also very good. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book follows this band as they reach the heights of fame and then the pitfalls as they fall away from fame and everything that comes with that. There are three female characters in this that are all so amazing. We have Daisy Jones, who's obviously like the main central heroine of the novel. We have Karen, who plays in the band, and then we have Camilla, who is the lead person's, I can't remember what his instrument he plays. I feel like he's either vocalist or guitarist, but he's the lead like male's wife, and let me tell you, that feels like she's just there to be a romantic interest, but she's really not. She's one of the most like amazing characters in this novel, and this book is really good at presenting real world types of people, real world types of women. Daisy Jones is wild, she's reckless, she doesn't seem to care at the start of the novel, and she gets into some stuff pretty deep that she probably doesn't want to get into. And we also have Karen, who is pretty cold, kind of distant. Karen is a complete opposite Camilla, who is the final like central female role in this novel. Camilla is Billy's wife, which makes it sound like she's just there as a romantic interest, but that is not true at all. She is one of the most driving forces of this novel. She is so caring, she's so complex, and the way she thinks is so amazing. This book is so worth reading, not just for like the brilliant story, but also for the representations that come out in it. Okay, next book I read a few years ago. It was recommended to me by a friend. She got it for me for Christmas and I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad she recommended it. It's called How Not to Disappear by Claire Furness. This book centres around a young girl called Hattie who finds out she's pregnant and then, obviously, as you do, sets out on a road trip with her great aunt. Gloria, who is Hattie's great aunt, is in the early stages of dementia, and this novel follows the two as they get closer, as they find out so much about each other, as they discover things about themselves. Self-discovery, road trip, what more could you want from a book? It's amazing. So heartbreaking. Obviously we have Hattie and Gloria. Gloria is like wild. She may be old, but she is wild. She's so ready to throw herself into things. Whereas Hattie seems to be a little bit different. She's slower. She's really not sure of herself, especially considering she's pregnant and she didn't intend to be. And more than anything, I think this book is special because of the relationships that it presents between women. Okay, next book is one of my absolute favourite books ever. It is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This book centres around twins, Jude and Noah. It's about relationships more than anything, about these twins trying to find a way to be friends again, to be family again after so much tragedy. The lead female character in this is one of the twins called Jude, and she's really amazing. And I like this book because it doesn't belittle Jude's struggles as she goes through things. You know, she cuts all her hair off, she just goes a little bit wild, but it doesn't make that seem ridiculous or silly in any way as she uses this to work through her grief, which I really appreciate. Okay, next book, a bit of an older one, also one of my favourite books ever. I relate a little bit too much to the character in this book. It's really not healthy. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This book is partially based on Plath's own life, and it centres around a young woman called Esther Greenwood. As she graduates from this women's college, she is like right at the edge of her future and she has no clue what she wants to do. She kind of knows she wants to be a writer. She has no clue how to get there. She has no clue how good she is. She has no clue her place in the world, and she also deals with a lot of like suicidal thoughts, with a lot of mental illness. Obviously it's partially based on Plath herself. It's partially based on her own thoughts, which I think is why we get such a depth to Esther as a character in this novel. Esther is clearly a very conflicted young woman, which comes across very clearly in the novel. It's so good as you watch Esther try and grapple with how to take her place in the world, which I think is a very real representation of a lot of young women, which I really appreciate. Next we have The Astonishing Colour of After by Emily X.R. Pan. This book takes place primarily in Taiwan when Lee, who's the main character of the novel, travels to go meet her mother's parents as her mother has recently passed away. This book tackles a lot of grief. It also tackles a lot of culture, especially as they're in Taiwan. It is about Lee as a character coming to terms with her own culture, with her own identity, especially after her mother has passed. I think this book is amazing. It also centres a lot around art. Lee is an artist. She also has synesthesia, which I think is something really cool to read about. I think there are a lot of strong female characters in this. We have Lee herself, who is obviously going through something. Her mother's just passed away. She's had to come over to Taiwan by herself to try and figure out why that's happened and why she never got to meet her mother's family. We also have her grandmother, who is more than she lets on to Lee. You have gradually learned that she is more than she lets on. She is a bigger person than she lets on. Okay, now I have the last book, and the last book actually isn't a fictional novel. I don't really read that much non-fiction, but this one was one that I got given for Christmas one year, and I'm so glad that I read this book because it is genuinely amazing. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. It is non-fiction, all of it is non-fiction, but the elements of storytelling that come into it, despite it being non-fiction, is amazing. It follows this woman, Rebecca Skloot, as she finds out about these things called HeLa cells, which are essentially cells that propelled medicine forward, propelled science forward by like so much. These cells were cancer cells taken from this black woman back in like the 50s maybe, and her family didn't know about this, and even she didn't know about this until 20 years after her death. These cells are still used in medicine today, and this book is a brilliant like almost detective novel, trying to get to the bottom of who Henrietta Lacks was, who her family is, how her family has been hounded by the press and by the media for like forever, and how they absolutely hate that this has happened, how they didn't consent to this in the first place, so obviously why is it happening. Not only is the author of this novel absolutely amazing, Rebecca Skloot, in the way that she tells the story, she doesn't make anything about herself at all. She focuses wholly on the family, on Henrietta Lacks, and there is the daughter of Henrietta Lacks that is featured in this quite a lot, and she is amazing. And I think it's even more amazing that the women in this are real people. They are genuinely real people, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate this realistic representation. That is it. That is all the books that I'm going to recommend to you. I hope you pick some of them up. All the books that I recommended are amazing. I hope this made you appreciate women on this International Women's Day, apart from the fact that it's not International Women's Day, it's a few days after International Women's Day, because I'm not organised, but I do still want to appreciate women. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram if you want to. Goodbye.